Hi guys, Miss Elder here. Okay, so this is the last lecture before the test. A couple things have changed because of a error, kind of on my part, a technical error for the test. There's no proctorio, and so the test has now become open book. So I hope that excites you. My camera is set up in a way where it's focused right here, but the screen is over here, so you're going to see me looking up a lot. I'm sorry for the weird angle. I'm using a weird document camera to record, which is what I normally do, but it just always bothers me that my eyes don't look right at the camera. Okay, so what this PowerPoint is a collection of things that I realized that I hadn't gone into enough detail with, or hadn't really covered yet, and I wanted to make sure that we did before the test. So take some notes, especially since you'll be able to use them now. Okay, guys, so one thing I wanted to touch on is this idea that in the Greek culture, and we can tell this based on our reading of the Iliad, because we've seen multiple men weep in front of other men, that crying is not something that's considered to be disgraceful in this culture. These slides may seem random in conjunction with each other, aside from their connection to the Iliad, but that's just because I went through topically to see what we still needed to cover. So if it feels like there's a missing connecting thread, you're not off, okay? They're each a little different. Okay, so you might remember back in book 2 when I told you to only read to a certain page because the rest of it was all just this long cataloging of ships. Well, there was actually a purpose why Homer did include that, kind of like why the book Exodus is in the Bible. I mean, there's a purpose to this long list. And so here are 4 reasons that Homer did, in fact, include this in his epic poem. First of all, to impress the audience with the sheer number of Greeks, which helps to indicate the scope of this war, just how many people were involved. To give lasting honor and glory to specific great heroes of the war. To lay out the geographical and political status of Greece at the time so that no matter what time you were listening to this particular epic, you would have a feel for what was going on in Greece. And to please listeners who hear people of their lineage or from part of Greece, from their part of Greece in the catalog. So imagine if Homer were a Texan and he had been writing about this, the great battle for the Republic of Texas, right? And we were listening to this story being told live. And at one point in the story, he decided to tell everybody, all of the people who participated in this big battle, like if we were talking about the Alamo, maybe, and he was talking about, I should know more about the Alamo, Davy Crockett, I don't know, fought in the Alamo. That's terrible of me. I'm not a native Texan. I shouldn't have started with this example. But my point is, if he had listed and said, like, people from Spring fought in the Alamo, and people from Conroe fought in the Alamo, and people from the Woodlands fought in the Alamo. When he said the Woodlands, we'd probably be like, what up, right? It's that represent. That's kind of another thing that's going on here with this catalog of ships in book 2. Okay, we've talked about the ring structure before, and it is called ring structure, though. If you like math, if you like algebra, I tend to think of it more parabolically, like a parabola, where you have a line of symmetry, and then each point has a corresponding point parallel on the other side of the line of symmetry. Not parallel mathematically speaking, but with the same y coordinate, I guess you would say. My point is that there's an event in book 1 that correlates to a parallel event in book 24. There's an event in book 2 that correlates to an event in book 23, and they follow each other down towards the middle like that, towards what you might call the vertex. The reason that Homer did this was to create a sense of symmetry and to create parallel situations to help make comparison and contrasting easier. When we examine the poem as a whole, the ring structure reveals the move from the chaos at the beginning of the story with the war, all the way to a sense of closure and order with Hector's funeral. Okay, now on the next slide, you'll see a chart of some of these parallel events, and you might recognize this from Mr. Futo's video. He asked you to pause, write this down. You may have done that already. If you haven't, you can do so now. But this is the same chart from Mr. Futo's video on book 24. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because you probably already took notes on this particular chart, but these are examples of parallel events from the ends of the book moving all the way into the middle. Okay, ekphrasis. Ekphrasis is when you have a detailed description of a work of visual art in a literary work. In the Iliad, when Achilles loses his armor when Patroclus goes to fight, when Hephaestus makes him new armor, one of the things that he builds him is a shield, a great intricate carved shield in Book 18. What you need to understand about ekphrasis, because at the end of Book 18 is the ekphrasis, is this detailed description of this shield, which is considered a work of art. It's that beautiful, even though it's a functional work of art. On the shield, war and violence only take up a small portion of the shield. Even in the city of peace, there is seen to be strife. So what does this reveal to us? This shows us that while war and violence are in fact inevitable, maybe in the modern times we might say conflict is inevitable, it should be only a small part of life. Okay, Mr. Feudo has already discussed themes with you, but I wanted to kind of flesh out into full thematic statements to sort of discuss some of the things that Homer's trying to teach us with this epic poem. So fate, while somewhat fluid in the world of the Iliad, is really not to be tampered with and is, relatively speaking, fixed. He teaches us that rage is a dominating emotion. It clouds all others, including reason, and therefore drives men to actions that are unwise. We also learn that through the actions of many of the gods that they are in fact just the same as men. They're like hyped up, overpowered men, right? They have power, more power than we do as mortals, and they don't die, but otherwise they have grievances, they have petty squabbles, they have desires, they have faults. They are very similar to humans, just on a little bit more of an advanced level. But not maturity-wise, I guess, is how I would say that. Okay, Aristeas, or Aristeas, depending on how you prefer to say it. I wanted to remind you that there are 4 prominent characters that do in fact have Aristeas. You've got Agamemnon's in Book 11, Hector, Achilles, and Patroclus. It occurs to me you might not have heard me say some of these characters being online. You've heard Mr. Feudo say a lot of them. He says Patroclus. I say Patroclus. I'm not sure which one is actually correct. It's just funny the way people say different things. Whoops. Sorry, y'all know my lights turn off. Okay. There are 4 standard parts of an Aristeia, beginning with inspiration, usually divine inspiration, the dawning of the armor, a moment of weakness or injury where it seems like things are going to go sour, and then the final boasting over the slain opponent. What in fact makes Patroclus's Aristeia different from the others is that his inspiration comes from a mortal instead of from a god or a goddess. His inspiration comes from Achilles. And then last but not least, I wanted to remind you of some of the more common epithets and patronymics that you might have seen in the story. Achilles is often referred to as being running or swift. Swift Achilles is his epithet. Hector is often referred to as the breaker of horses. Agamemnon's patronymic is Atreides. Odysseus's epithet is tactful and royal. And Apollo is often referred to as Phoebus. These are just things to remember. So if you've taken some notes, and if I went too fast, you can always go back and pause and then write and then keep playing. I don't know why I'm telling you that. You know that. We are now, since the test is now open book, open note, you can use these on the test. I think you're going to do really well. I want you to email me if you have any questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.